Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled The United Nation of Yisra'el, Part 7, The Path We Must Follow to Achieve the Unity of the Faith and to Expose the False Doctrine Destroying Our Nation. The podcast objectives are reveal how we can guard ourselves from false doctrine, reveal why the beliefs of many are not true, reveal the power of spiritual analysis, and reveal the greatest deception in our world today. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcast or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us. For these are troubling times, and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below, and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. The future and fate cannot be changed. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome back to our Word from a Watchman series. In our most recent lesson, we achieved many goals. First and foremost, we confirmed that unity can only be achieved by knowledge and understanding. Knowing this, Yahuwah has raised up good shepherds who are feeding his chosen elect with knowledge and understanding, which is empowering us to see through all the false doctrines that are destroying our nation and the false prophets who are promoting them. Now, this is a key matter you must understand. You see, while many are trying to coexist with the spiritual tares in our midst, Yahuwah is commanding us to stay away from them. Here is why. False doctrine is the material version of deception, which is the deadliest degree of lawlessness. Ergo, false doctrine is not just any poison. Quite the contrary. False doctrine is the deadliest poison known to man. And this is why we have been commanded to call out the false prophets in our midst and their false doctrine. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, if we don't warn the men and women in this nation who are still in play to be saved, they are going to die, and their blood will be on our hands. For false doctrine is not just any killer. Quite the contrary. False doctrine is a silent killer, and none of his victims ever saw him coming. As I say, false doctrine is deadlier than you could ever imagine. Not only this, But the deceptions we have witnessed thus far are minor in comparison to the deceptions that are yet to come. Listen to me if you want to be saved. Today, we are only contending with the footmen, but tomorrow we contend with the horses, i.e., false prophets with false doctrines that have the power to deceive even the very elect. Now, this brings me to the next key point from last Friday, to wit, Yahushua Messiah provides a blueprint for dealing with false prophets, whether you are dealing with the footmen or with horses. Here is why this is so important. By exposing the false prophets in our midst, we can expose their false doctrine and the spiritual delinquents who are following them. Now, this is a key matter to understand, for we have reached an interval in this season where lines have been drawn and choices have been made. Ergo, the future and the fates of the majority within this nation cannot be changed. This is why we must put on the girdle of truth and never take it off. For the girdle of truth unlocks the ruach of discernment, which gives us the power to see through the ruach of men. This is why Malachi prophesied, saying, "Then those who fear Yahuwah shall see the difference between the righteous and the wrong, between one who serves Elohim and one who does not serve him." My dear friends, Malachi is confirming what I just said. Vis-a-vis, all who fear Elohim have the ruach of discernment. And trust me, we will not survive in these last days if we don't use it. For the only way we can guard ourselves from false doctrine is by the ruach of discernment. Now, as you learned last Friday, this speaks to the social model for exposing false doctrine and the false prophets in our midst. And yet, there are three more orders we must address vis-a-vis the conceptual, the analytical, and the procedural. And as it so happens, we can address these three models collectively. In this order, I will use these three models to expose all the false doctrines destroying this nation by proving conceptually, analytically, and procedurally why they cannot be true. In the process, you will be strengthened in your faith and in the knowledge of Elohim, for this is his will for you. Let's get started. Converting core beliefs into true beliefs. Now, in beginning to expose all the false doctrines that are destroying our nation, we must first start with establishing a baseline, i.e., foundation of truth. For truth is the source of our spiritual values and the primary driver of our core beliefs. Now, we have touched on core beliefs throughout this series on division and unity. And seeing as it is so vital to the unity of the faith, I will provide a definition for it at this time. By definition, your core beliefs are a body of information that you embrace as the truth, the data points of which determine what you will believe over time and how you will view the world. Now, this definition reveals why your core beliefs are so crucial as it pertains to your fate and your future. Vis-a-vis, your core beliefs determine what you will believe over time. Ergo, your core beliefs dictate all your actions. And this, my friends, is why the first stop in our exposition of false doctrine is ensuring our core beliefs are being driven by what is true as opposed to what we want to be true. Here is why. There is no value in your beliefs if your core beliefs are not consistently purged by the truth. This is why truth must be situated at the foundation of your faith. For the Tehuda is line upon line and precept upon precept. Herein lies the key to achieving unity. Get this. Unity can only be achieved by men and women whose core beliefs are established upon the truth. Now, that was the inflection. Here is the problem. Vis-a-vis, the majority within our nation don't believe in the truth. This is why 10,000 men in this nation have 10,000 core beliefs, and they are all in error. For, as I always say, if you don't stand for truth, you will fall for anything. This is why I kicked off our exposition of false doctrine with the social model. To wit, when you embark on any spiritual venture of the group variety, the first rule of thumb is know your group, or in my case, know your audience. My dear friends, this is why I provided a disclaimer during the transition from phase 1 to phase 2 in our exposition of lawlessness. If you recall, in those days, I made it quite clear that phase 2 is not for everyone. Specifically, phase 2 is not for anyone who is not wearing the girdle of truth. Here is why. Anyone who is not wearing the girdle of truth has no mechanism for converting their core beliefs into true beliefs, i.e., the knowledge of Elohim. Ergo, they will not receive the knowledge of Elohim that he has called me to share. For one cannot receive what he cannot understand. To your good fortune, you are wearing the girdle of truth, and now we are about to put it to good use. For the time has come for us to use the girdle of truth to purge all our core beliefs. And in the process, we will expose all the false doctrines that are destroying our nation. And more importantly, we will achieve the unity of the faith. Let's get to work. To be saved in these last days. Now, as you know, the way to expose false doctrine is by not focusing on false doctrine. Quite the contrary, we expose false doctrine by shining a light on the truth, which allows us to receive the knowledge of Elohim. My dear friends, you must appreciate this principle, for it is at the foundation of your spiritual life. To wit, hope is the foundation of the Tehuda of Yahushua Messiah, and it is designed to cause you to focus on the solutions to your problems and not the problems. Remember, the man who focuses on his problems is like Peter when he was walking on the water. You know the story. He took his eyes off the master, and as he began considering the elements around him, he began to sink. As I say, this example of spiritual decay is happening every day. And thus, I'll say it again. If you focus on your problems, you will struggle to overcome them, which is why the Ruach is leading me to take a different approach. Along these lines, there are 3 more models we must apply in our exposition of false doctrine, and we can apply them all by analyzing our core beliefs. Here is why. The spiritual analysis of our core beliefs accounts for the conceptual, procedural, and analytical models for exposing false doctrine. Now, procedurally speaking, spiritual analysis is how we achieve understanding. It is the process by which the girdle of truth purges our core beliefs of every matter that is not aligned with the knowledge of Elohim. Next, conceptually speaking, spiritual analysis at the high level leads to the acquisition of convictions, to wit, understanding, which provides you with a framework for receiving knowledge. For understanding establishes boundaries around what is true. And last but not least, analytically speaking, spiritual analysis at the detailed level strengthens your convictions while hardening your understanding. This provides you with a firm foundation of truth that cannot be penetrated. Therefore, the next step in our Word from a Watchman series is very simple. Vis-a-vis, we are going to conduct multiple spiritual analyses on the most critical knowledge you must receive to be saved in these last days. Along these lines, I'm not going to waste your time with non-essential matters. Trust me, that is what Satan wants. To wit, he wants us to focus on matters that are not salvation critical. Ergo, we will follow the opposite path. We, my friend, will focus on the knowledge we must possess to be saved in these last days. And we must make haste, for the time is drawing near, and this season will have soon faded away. The greatest deception in our world today. Now, in executing our spiritual analyses, we must begin at the foundation of our beliefs. For truth is evolutionary and progressive. As Isaiah prophesied, it is structured in a linear fashion. And as Peter preached, it is achieved by addition and subtraction. Not only this, but the enemy has once again shown us his crooked hand. To wit, he has situated a good majority of false doctrine at the foundation of truth. Here is why. As truth is evolutionary and progressive, the enemy can keep us from evolving and progressing if he corrupts the foundation of our beliefs. Therefore, by starting at the foundation and working our way up, we will expose and eliminate a good majority of false doctrine very early in our spiritual analyses. And this, my friends, will make the truth of many matters very plain to see. Now, that said, the question of the hour is simply this: what is the first spiritual analysis we must take up? To wit, what truth is the majority of false doctrine designed to hide? The answer is sure, and we have already touched on it. Enter Yahushua Messiah. Now, as I told you aforetime, you cannot receive the revelation of Yahushua Messiah as a whole. Quite the contrary, you must receive the knowledge of him the same way you achieve his tehuda, i.e., line upon line and precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. That said, if you stick with me, I promise you, you will see it. You, my friend, will know the truth about the man who declared, I am the truth. And as he is the truth, he will set you free from the curse of this captivity. Hallelujah. Okay, so where do we start? No doubt, the knowledge of Yahushua Messiah is both intricate and vast. Ergo, how do we uncover the truth about a man who the enemy has invested the majority of his resources to hide? The answer is sure. Vis-a-vis, we must understand his purpose with specific regards to these last days. If you recall, purpose is the first of the 7 guidelines for every word of prophecy. It is the foundation for where there is no purpose, there can be no prophecy. As for Yahushua, he is not only the word that was made flesh, but he is also the word of prophecy. For look, listen, it has been written that Tehuda of Yahushua Messiah is the Ruach of prophecy. Praise Yah. Now, that said, the next question we must address is this. What is the purpose of Yahushua Messiah with specific regards to these last days? The answer is sure, and we have touched on it in prior podcasts. Isaiah 49:6 is revealing, and he, Yahuwah, says, shall it be a small matter for you to be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to bring back the preserved ones of Yisra'el. And I shall give you as a light to the nations, to be my deliverance to the ends of the earth. Isaiah 42:6, I, Yahuwah, have called you in righteousness, and I strengthen your hand and guard you, and give you for a covenant to a people, for a light to the nations. Now, if you allow me to summarize these passages, I shall reveal the purpose of Yahushua Messiah in these last days with the following treasure box. Yahushua Messiah is raising up a righteous seed of Jacob who have purified themselves so that they can worship Elohim in spirit and in truth. This righteous seed is the renewed nation of Yisra'el, men and women who are being sealed by adhering to the Tehuda of Yahushua Messiah. And as we have entered into the covenant of restoration, Yahushua, by the Ruach of Elohim, will guard us during the great distress. And at the appointed time, he will bring us back into the land of promise, which will be renewed as we are coming. Amen. Now, this is the foundation of our belief in Yahushua Messiah, again, with specific regards to these last days. Ergo, if you have any beliefs that are contrary to this knowledge, I suggest you put it on the table, or if you're ready, cast it aside. And as you pray and seek the Father as to what you should do from now, allow me to tell you what the false Hebrews are doing. Vis-a-vis, they are resisting Yahushua Messiah because they don't want to follow his spiritual standard. My dear friends, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Achieving perfection in the Ruach of Elohim is the hardest thing you'll ever do. Ergo, the false Hebrews won't do it. And here's what they fail to realize. Yahushua Messiah is not raising up anyone who refuses to follow his spiritual standard. The reason why is sure. Vis-a-vis, his spiritual standard involves suffering. And when you refuse to suffer by guarding the Tehuda of Yahushua Messiah, you are belittling his suffering and his sacrifice. Now, I know the implications of this manner of sacrilege, and so I will gladly toil and suffer, for I am persuaded that the suffering we are subjected to in this life is nothing compared to the joy that is awaiting those who are being set apart and sealed by the Tehuda of Yahushua Messiah. However, not everyone in this nation feels this way. As I say, they don't want to suffer. And yet, because they perceive the wrath of Elohim, that is upon all who walk contrary to his will. They refuse to accept their reality. Notwithstanding, endless death is upon all who resist the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. And yet, these false Hebrews are in denial concerning their endless death sentence. And so, what do? Well, I'll tell you. Get this. The false Hebrews in our midst have been infected with one of the greatest deceptions of all time, to wit, the deadliest example of eternal security in the history of our nation. That is the elevation of the Torah of Moshe over the Tehudah and the Torah of Yahushua Messiah. Along these lines, the enemy has authored a false narrative which has created a false reality where the Torah of Moshe and the Torah of Yahushua Messiah are contrary to each other. This, of course, is not true, but it is a satanic narrative being pushed by false Hebrews. Not only this, but this satanic movement has created a false reality where the revelation of Yahushua Messiah is in conflict with the Torah, which only serves one purpose. That is to validate the deception of eternal security these false Hebrews are under because they don't love Elohim. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, this is the greatest deception and false doctrine in our world today. And so, Yahuwah has called me to address it as a priority in our Word from a Watchman series. And although this spiritual analysis will not change the future or the fate of the majority in this nation, it will reach those who were chosen to be saved according to his plan, which again is 1 from a city and 2 from a clan. That said, if you are the 1 from a city, or if you are the 2 from a clan, I formally invite you to hear what the Ruach has to say about the most controversial topic in our nation today. Trust me, you will not only see the truth concerning this false narrative, but you will also take a major step in your understanding of the revelation of Yahushua Messiah. And so I'll say it again. The journey begins next Friday. Yahuwah bless you until then. Now, here is the final word. Our nation is filled with spiritual paralysis, for many are oblivious to spiritual analysis. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, spiritual analysis is not a new thing. It's not some trendy topic, and it's not something anyone created. On the rather, it is simply a progressive model of consideration that leads to a conclusion and results in convictions. For look, listen, it has been written, blessed is the man who shall not walk in the counsel of the wrong, and shall not stand in the path of sinners, and shall not sit in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the Torah of Yahuwah, and he meditates in his Torah day and night. My dear friends, spiritual analysis is a byproduct of meditation. To wit, as we meditate on the Torah of Elohim, our spiritual mind engages in analysis in an effort to achieve understanding, which we shall have. For understanding is a feature of the Ruach of Elohim, which we have. Heretofore, I recommend clear your mind of non-essentials and give yourself to meditate. For behold, there is in Zion a stone for a foundation, and he who is believing shall not make haste. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson. And if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com. And I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, The United Nation of Yisra'el, Part 7. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 536, The Impact of Ignorance and Deception, Part 6. I will post this podcast on Monday, November 17th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.